Welcome back, everybody, to the Future of Work series. Here with Brick's CEO and co-founder Bassem Hamdy. Bassem, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. You've stuck around this long. You're learning something.
That's right. Yeah. So if you've been through our Future of Work series, you've learned hopefully quite a lot about the money workflow and how some technology is going to impact it, the people, the processes, and the systems around them.
How people's jobs are going to get better.
How people's jobs are going to get better. That's really what the future of work is about.
Yeah.
We should be clear. The future of work is bright. The future is positive, right?
Yeah.
We're all optimistic about the future here.
Yeah, amazing.
Right? Speaking of people, what the next workflow we're talking about today is labor and equipment forecasting.
Yeah.
Right. For those that are especially our trade friends, we know labor is hard to get.
Yep.
Using your labor wisely and being able to forecast it gives you a huge advantage in the market today. So talk to us a little bit about the labor and equipment forecasting as part of the money workflow.
Yeah, I think the labor in general can be broken up into general conditions labor, which is the professional labor, more of what GCs might call it, and then labor forecasting for self-performed, whether you're a subcontractor or you have a self-performed division of the GC world. Like you said, when I started implementing construction software, everybody was basically union. So you needed labor. You went to the union hall. There's a bunch of people there and you picked them up and you got work. That was it. We didn't have to forecast. There was a surplus of trade labor. It was a surplus. Can you imagine that world? It was not that long ago, by the way. There was a surplus of trade labor. And if you needed it, you got it. That was it. You got paid well, but you needed it, you got it. Now that is a scarcity. There's scarcity of labor. There's also scarcity of skills. So people can't just do any job. You can't just pick up a project engineer and tell them to be a PM. There's like training and some very vast knowledge. So with scarcity, basic economics, comes a need to be more accurate in your forecasts around it. Labor forecasting and equipment forecasting, we can just call it resource forecasting. There's human resources and equipment resources. Is probably the hardest type of forecasting anybody will ever do because humans are variable. What they spend and how much time they spend is variable. And no matter how much we try, timesheets, where they get allocated, is completely driven by humans at least once a week, maybe 2 weeks out that you figure out your cost. So the actuals part of the labor forecast or the equipment forecast and the actual budget portion are very, very difficult. The other thing that's very difficult is when I look at a labor forecast, if I'm not using a brick kind of predictive model with time travel, it just says 10,000 person hours. That doesn't mean anything because how much have I used? How much do I have? How much am I going to need next month, next quarter, next year? That's the issue. So this is a really, really meaty, hard problem. And, we go in and we always replace, like when you go into project forecasting, they have something. A company has a project forecast. They have a WIP.
Right.
They have a project initiation process. We come into companies that don't have this.
Right.
And it's the hardest part because they don't even know what to imagine.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. But they don't have this because it just takes too long, has never been accurate. And they've also, forgive all the technologists out there, they've been sold a bill of goods by daily journal products or time capture products. All of these systems that are out there that are telling them, hey, put an app on a superintendent's phone. But nothing talks.
Right.
And the processes are all broken. So this is a hard one. This is a really hard one.
Yeah, this is a really hard one. How do you see, most companies trying to do it today? I mean, you mentioned it's really hard. A lot of companies don't do it very well. How do you see companies trying to solve this problem today?
Excel spreadsheets. And if you're self-performer, if you're subcontractor, they get to the superintendent or the foreman and they try to do like maybe a 3-week look ahead and 9-week look ahead, depending on the horizon, maybe a 1-week look ahead or a 4-week look ahead, where they'll say, these are the things I have coming up on my schedule. This is how many hours I think I'm going to need. And then they send that spreadsheet into either, a master superintendent or somebody in payroll, somebody in human resources, somebody in labor, and they go, can we fill in these gaps? So they're doing it. It's very time intensive, very time intensive. Superintendents aren't walking sites. They'll tell me they're not walking sites. They're not focused on delivering work. Foremen say the same thing because they're trying to figure out how much labor they need next week. And they know they're not going to have enough. Same with equipment, by the way. And people, equipment is a little less rare than labor. I mean, but it's expensive. It's very, very expensive. And sometimes project managers that don't forecast well, like hoard equipment. That's one issue. They also forget they have the equipment. That's the other issue. Yeah. Somebody else needs it, but I'm renting it because I didn't know an owned piece of equipment was available. Why? Because it's so time consuming. It's so time consuming. They just have never been given, I'm telling you, they've never been given that playing field. They've never been given an ability outside of Excel to do this. So generally it's in Excel, it's a mess, it's guessing, it goes to the wrong people at the wrong time, no decisions are being made or actioned, and then ultimately 30, 60, 90 days down the road, they're upside down on a project because they can't deliver the labor they need.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, imagine, let's imagine a world where all of a sudden you could, have a labor forecast.
Yep.
Not only have a labor forecast, but you could also track your actuals against that forecast.
That's correct. Yeah.
And have a history around that.
Yeah. Let's start with data collection. We need the data from the schedule. We need the data from the time capturing tool.
Yeah.
We need the data from the daily log tool. That needs to all come up and be presented in a layer that is attractive and personalized to the individual or the type of project or the company's template. So we're collecting first, then we're translating to a unified version, schedule, project, people, things, resources. And then that is all presented. Then we're collecting the actuals and saying, this is what you've actually done. Then we're collecting the last forecast. And this is what you said you needed.
Yeah.
Then it's a rolling forecast going forward. Once that playing field is set, we're talking future of work, to some folks that are in the field right now trying to forecast labor, this sounds like science fiction. Yeah. This is a rolling forecast of people and things that you are using and need on a project with the assist of time travel, predictive analytics that are now driving what they think you should need. You say you're going to burn off your general conditions or your labor at X percentage per month. Well, that's never been done before in the history of your company. I think somebody should be aware of that.
Right. Yeah. Time is, just remind what time travel is: the ability to take your historical past, like kind of your historical fingerprint, and apply that to your forecast. So on these types of jobs of this size, here's how we burn labor historically.
And like the mutual fund commercials say, past results don't guarantee future outcomes.
Right.
That's true. They don't guarantee future outcomes, but I'd rather have a baseline comparison than none at all.
Right. 100%. It's about having more data. And if you can do it effortlessly, why not?
Why not
have it? So let's have a look in Brick and look at the workflow you just talked us through, what that looks like.
Hey, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the ability to do labor and equipment forecasting in Brick. We'll talk through a couple examples, but really there's a few different ways that we see our customers conducting this exercise. One of them is represented here on the screen through our workflow engine, where a lot of our companies, they want the ability for their project teams to either on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, forecast out the remaining requirements when it comes to labor, equipment, whatever other resources are being utilized within the business. And through the Brick connected workflow, that forecasted resource data is then automatically consolidating into a summary level view. So if you're a business that has a lot of different jobs going on at one time, that's usually a very manual effort to consolidate all of that project level information. This gives your project teams the ability to come in, conduct that exercise, and then from a summary level perspective, you'll always have all that information consolidated into one place. The other way to go about it is to actually start at the summary level. So that's the example we have up on the screen, where in this example, I'm looking across all of my projects. I have different equipment types. On the equipment side, on the labor side, I'm breaking this up by position. I have different employee names here. So really what we're doing with this tool is we're taking, in this example, we're taking hours, we're forecasting them out over time, and we're comparing those forecasts with internal constraints. So I want to know when I've exceeded this 250-hour weekly threshold on the apprentice side. Let's say I hire someone else on. Again, these are easy to maintain items, these constraints, these are typically known throughout the business. So what we want to be able to do is to call out when you're over capacity or when you're going to be over capacity. So you can plan accordingly. A lot of our customers want to pair this type of workbook with something like a revenue forecast. So if you're going to go after those new jobs, if you're going to win some new opportunities, of course, a key portion of being able to facilitate that work is being able to staff it appropriately, making sure you have all the equipment that you need to be able to complete that process. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to forecast out some hours over time, and I'm just going to make up these values here just for the sake of the exercise. What I'm doing here is I'm spreading these values evenly. There's a few different ways you could spread values within Brick. You might want to evenly spread values. You could front load a project if you know in this example there's going to be a lot of labor requirements up front on the job. You can backload a project. You can use a bell curve. But Brick also has what we call our custom curves. So what you're able to do with this custom curve tool, our time travel tool, is we can actually ingest your historical data. So if you want us to bring in historical equipment information or historical labor information, whatever that data point is, we can bring that in so that you're getting a predictive custom forecast model built off of what's happened in the past. So while the past might always not reflect the future, it is going to provide a great baseline for you to work off of. So if you have good historical data, if you want to utilize that historical data to get future insights, we have this time travel tool. Once I create one of these custom curves, you'll see again, we bring in that data, it creates a custom spread over time. I can then actually apply these curves within the workbook. So let's say I'm going to use my K through 12 project apprentice curve here. On the equipment side, I'm using some historical backhoe curves. So again, I'll just make up some values here. And what the tool really allows you to do is obviously right now these values haven't forecasted. When I come up and I hit recalculate, I could just recalculate my labor curve. I could recalculate my equipment curve, but I'll recalculate all of them. And what you'll see is that as these hours spread out over time, we've put in some conditional formatting here for you to be able to very easily see when you're exceeding that threshold. So if you want to say, let's say if you're under 90% capacity, you want it to be green. If you're maybe 90 to 100%, that might be more in the yellow range. And then anything over 100 is going to be constituted by that red, calling out that red flag, that exception. You'll see here we're looking green, so that means we're under capacity. But for the sake of the demonstration, let's just say Nico over here works a lot of hours. We'll say 80,000. And again, this is all really just to call out how you can utilize these tools. But we want to be able to take these hours that are being forecasted at the project level or at the summary level. We want to make it really easy so those values can be forecasted out over time. And then we want to proactively call out when you've exceeded capacity in those forecasts so that you can proactively take action on that information. We don't want, no one wants to take on a new job and then not be able to staff it or not have the appropriate equipment to be able to facilitate the work. So really where Brick is able to come into play is we want to be really proactive with calling those values out. So you see, I've exceeded those thresholds now.
Yeah, so we saw that exactly.
Yeah, and you saw that those smart curves, like the one thing that is so interesting about time travel is we've consumed your CRM system and your accounting system. Now we're using that playing field to say, okay, this project, this owner, this location, other features, and that's what the curve looks like. So an industrial project looks different than a commercial project. Bill's different, has different cash flow metrics. That's the real key differentiator here is that when you're going in, this is one of the workflows that require the most, I talk about co-pilots a lot.
Yeah.
That Brick is a co-pilot on your construction company. This is the one that really does need a co-pilot and a navigator, like the old school days.
Yep.
It needs a co-pilot and a navigator because ultimately this is a really hard workflow. It moves fast. I say, construction is the only other industry in the world that gets rained out, us in baseball. Like you get rained out, all of a sudden you didn't use labor, you're behind the 8 ball. Now you don't have enough labor, your equipment broke. All of these things. I say that another saying is like construction is a full contact sport. You don't have the team on the field. You are not a construction company. I don't care how much technology you buy. If you don't have laborers, journeymen, foremen, superintendents, you're not a construction company.
Yeah.
And if you show up on site without any of those people, you're not getting any money. You're not getting any work. that's the thing we talk about, the golden thread.
Yes.
The golden thread to dollars is, yeah, labor, I know I need to get something done, but if I don't swing that hammer today, I don't bill it. And that's the ultimate golden thread to cash flow. Not understanding your cash flow is what it puts companies out of business. Ultimately, if you cannot field a team for days or weeks, then you are essentially
right.
not a company.
Yeah, you can't bill if you're not doing the work, obviously. You know, another example I've heard with one of our customers, a very large mechanical subcontractor, is they actually use their labor forecasts in their business development meetings.
Right.
Because they sit down with, they've done their forecast on the labor side. They have that rolling forecast that we saw. They sit down with business development and go, hey, look, we have windows, in November, of January, February next year. Let's get some projects. We got to put people to work.
What a great story here. It's not just putting them to work, but it's higher customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
A lot of great companies go out of business after their largest revenue year because they go in there and they just get all the work they can get. A lot of companies go out of business because of too much work.
Yes.
And the customers are pissed that they can't start a project because they don't have the labor to do it. Think about how easy it is for me to say, wave a magic wand. But it is true. It's a magic wand where the labor forecast is self-generated. 70, 80% of it is generated through the collection of data and the models that I talk about, those templates. Mm-hmm. Now we have that. Now we can think about where those spaces are to, one of our clients used to call it faces and spaces, find faces to fill the space.
Yeah.
And ultimately you generally want to move into a direction where understanding where your equipment, understanding where your people are, drive better customer satisfaction because you're going to start the job when you told them you'd start the job. Nothing's more frustrating to an owner or a general contractor that has contracted you and you say, I'll be there Tuesday, and you don't show up to Thursday because you couldn't field the team.
Yeah. We have another customer that calls it belly buttons. That's another one. Shout out Joe Burkett over there. And the other thing about, being able to forecast that labor and have conversations with business development or other parts of the business, like this is a great example of how the future of work is thinking, right?
Yeah.
Now I used to spend all my time putting this labor forecast together. Nobody would ever look at it or it was useless. Now I spend less time putting it together. What do I do with all this time that I have to actually use it?
The reason why it was useless is because by the time they put it together, it was old data. It was 3 months in arrears, right? So now it's in real time.
Right.
Now you're doing it. Now the machine's helping you do it. You got a co-pilot. Now you're thinking, okay, how do I make money off of this?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, starting a job late costs you money.
Right.
Starting a job, having two people sit on the sidelines, you field a team with too many people, that costs you money.
Right.
Having equipment rentals that are just burning cash on site, that costs you money.
Yeah.
This is money that comes directly out of your bottom line. Most labor forecasts are done by subcontractors in our family of companies, right? So our customers are pretty evenly split between subcontractors and GCs. Most labor forecasts start at the subcontractor level. A lot of those subcontractors are fixed fee or total, lump sum contractors.
Yeah.
They're not billing time and materials. They're not building guaranteed max project. That means that equipment and labor hits their margin directly. So just imagine dropping that because you're not doing the collection work. You're not doing the difficult, arduous collection.
Yeah.
You're not arguing over where the labor is. You're not dealing with a dozen systems. All of that goes away. You get what you need to see. You can augment it yourself and see where things are. But in this case, machines are doing pretty good at predicting, and especially for labor, and getting that done so that you can be a more profitable business that's within your grasp. Now, it's a hard one because it involves folks like superintendents and foremen, labor out there. It involves, your accountant, your operations. It touches every piece. I don't recommend doing this as the first thing that you do when you're like digitally transforming your business.
Right.
But it's definitely one that will have the highest rate of return for you, especially if you're a self-performer.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Labor resource planning, labor forecasting, great part of the money workflow, and something that should be more accessible to folks in this future of work.
Love it.
Great, love it. Thanks. Stick around for the next one.